Welcome to another episode of the LRA's Capital Connection. I'm your host, Wendy Warren, and we're back with LRA President and CEO Stan Harris, and he's going to tell us where we are right now in the legislative session that's going to wrap in 1 week. It's June 1st. Welcome back, Stan.
Thanks, Wendy. It's a busy time at the Capitol. We have the end of a term, so we have a lot of term-limited senators and House members that are having their farewell speeches, and there's a lot of emotion, and there's folks that are thanking people that supported them and served them and the staffs and things of that sort. So it's always kind of an interesting piece when we finish a term like this. But, you know, when I look back when we started in April putting our bill track together, this was one of those years that the maximum number of bills that could be filed was about 720 non-fiscal bills. And we came into this session with a lot of hope for some good things in tax reform and budget reform and management. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear that many or any of those tax things will go forward. But going to some specific things that are related to the restaurant industry, one of the first things that we did was get out of committee House Bill 141 by Representative Matthew Willard. And that was affecting Orleans Parish and the possibility of raising the alcohol license fees for low and high content. And our agreement with the city is when they got rid of the illegal fee that they were charging for alcohol license processing, that we would help try to get a bill passed. This bill would require a supermajority. And when we ticked the floor, we realized it wasn't there. So we've just parked the bill and it won't move any further. But on another note in alcohol, we have passed, and it's gone to the governor's office for signature or consideration, House Bill 651 by Representative John Ilg from Jefferson Parish, that will seek to allow a restaurant to sell legally a product on or off premise for that type of consumption. We'd run into a problem with ATC that they took the view that if a restaurant guest in a parish or municipality that allowed for drinks to go, they could take it from the table, but they couldn't buy it at the bar. So we kind of thought it was a distinction without really a difference. And then probably the hottest bill of this session was Senate Bill 194 by Senator Beth Mizell, that initially sought to remove 18 to 20-year-olds from working, performing, or being on the premises of an alcohol licensee as a bar, which is a Class A general. In the Senate, we were able to amend out the 18 to 20 language. On the Senate floor, we put in an amendment that in the event that the person accessed the place, licensed premise with using a fake ID, that they could have no cause or right of action civilly against the bar owner should something happen. Unfortunately, when it came over to the House and House Judiciary, they immediately stripped those amendments off, which made us have to go to oppose the bill. They didn't try to put the 18 to 20 restriction back on, but what they did propose was some very restrictive dram shop language, which would have created strict liability for bars in Louisiana. In speaking with the insurance industry, their thought was that it would have made it impossible for bars to obtain liquor liability, and it also would have made it a hop, skip, and a jump to try that over to restaurants. So again, we live without strict liability since 1986, and we're going to continue to support that going away. Another bill that's passed for the fourth time in this term is House Bill 131 by Danny McCormick from Oil City, that seeks to allow constitutional carry, which would be a concealed carry without having to be licensed, permitted, or taking a class. They put some different things in this bill. It's been vetoed 3 times by Governor Edwards, but they're going to send it to him again with strong vote counts, and we'll see if he signs it this time around. But it's, as I said, it's a pretty interesting time to start looking at these things. On the employment side, this was, again, another busy year. The governor's been trying to pass a minimum wage bill. We were able to negotiate in that it still protect tip credit wages, but there were some things in there, some rights of action that we were uncomfortable with. We got the Senate version amended It came out of committee on Monday, and then it went to the Senate floor and died. And we expected it to. It was a pretty straight party line vote with one Republican, Rogers Pope, who's not running for re-election, voting with the Democrats to try to bring the bill back to life. We had another bill from Ed Larvadain up in the Alexandria area that was relative to trying to make the employer responsible for any workplace violence that happened in their business, even if it was from a third party. That bill fortunately died. There was another bill by Representative Mandy Landry from New Orleans that sought to take all of the restrictions about having THC in your system if you were injured in a workplace accident. And as it currently states in a statute, if you have THC in your system, you're accepted. You're unable to get workers' comp benefits. That bill still sits on the House floor, subject to call, but it won't get the votes to pass. There was a House version of the state minimum wage bill, but another bill that had a good debate but was very disquieting to us was a bill by Amy Freeman out of New Orleans that would have sought to provide 12 weeks of paid leave for a broad array of reasons for any employer of 25 or more.
Wow.
They were going to create a fund. That fund was going to be partially funded by the employee and partially by the employer. But small businesses, and when I think small businesses, a 50-person business is still a small business. If you had 4 people out on this type of leave for all this array of issues, you have to replace those people, and then you have to offer this other person their job back when they come back. So I could tell you here at the LRA it would be a real challenge, and I'm sure in a lot of other places that would be a challenge. There were multiple bills that were dealing with wage disclosure, wage history, and retaliation. A business today can have a policy that says that you're welcome to discuss your pay with anyone there. They're also welcome to have one that says you're not to discuss it with anyone there. But it can't be used in a retaliatory manner. So from our standpoint, when we look at these types of things, we want to make sure that the legislature is not creating bad intention and a bad policy to manage. You know, today I saw something that just came up in California. California had been the home of joint employer, and they had gotten the federal level to embrace this, and they had passed a rule in the Obama administration that we got overturned. Today, the California Assembly passed a bill that makes franchisors responsible for the acts of their franchisees. So they're going to keep skinning the cat. They're going to keep trying to find another way to take a bite at the apple. But these are things that are anti-business, especially to our industry that might have quite a few franchisees that operate in it that are based in our state.
Right. Stay tuned for a message from our LRA Workers' Comp program.
Louisiana hotels know a thing or two about hospitality, from the thread count of the sheets, to the little scented soaps in the bath, to the praline on the pillow. For the Louisiana Restaurant Association's SIF, the same is true when it comes to workers' comp. Our team knows what Louisiana hotels need when it comes to your team's safety and your success. Everybody who's anybody goes with LRA Workers' Comp. Ask around. In this business, word of mouth is everything.
We're back with Stan, and we have more topics. So many topics touch the Restaurant Association and the restaurant industry.
Yeah, our members are struggling right now with their commercial property insurance, especially if they're going through a renewal right now, and hurricane season started today. There was a bill that would have made the commissioner of insurance appointed. That didn't get a hearing. There were also some bills to change some of the structures and encourage more insurance companies to offer discounts for coming into the state.
Right.
We're trying to get our members to understand that if you're still purchasing insurance with the same types of retention or deductibles that you were in 2005, you really need to be looking at that and talking with your broker, your agent. We're happy to take a phone call and kind of walk you through and talk about your coverage and things and help put you with someone that might be able to give you another look at this. But it's really important because it's a cost center that you really don't have any control of. Moving on and pivoting to a couple of seafood issues, we do have a bill by Mandy Landry that's moving through the process that's going to provide a small tax credit for businesses that recycle oyster shells. And to recycle oyster shells, let's be clear that you're typically paying someone to haul them off.
Right.
So it's not a free thing, but you're going to get a little reward for doing the right thing. There was a bill earlier in the session, House Bill 528 by Representative Matt Cormier, that we were able to defeat in House Natural Resources, that would have brought the wildlife and fisheries agents in to try to enforce menu labeling because they felt like the Department of Health wasn't doing a good enough job. We don't need to bring guns into restaurants for people to do enforcement on health department rules. So that made a lot of sense. We also did not object to a bill that would increase the amount of the fee for imported seafood safety and that fund. That's paid by the people who import foreign seafood. It's a small amount, $125 or $150, and that money is used to pay for testing of that particular product that LDH has under its responsibility. There was a bill to change LDH from doing the testing themselves to give it to LSU Ag. Don't really know how that's going to finally wash out, but that's where we are in that particular process. But, when it gets down to it, there were some House and Senate concurrent resolutions yesterday that were heard in House Natural Resources, and we respect the plight of the shrimping industry. Mm-hmm. But, I had lunch with someone today that said in Patterson and Morgan City, when they were starting their business in the 70s, there were probably 100 shrimp boats, and there's not one that exists today. And that business is not going to recover. It's not going to come back. Much like when we look at Avondale Shipyard, we're not building ships. And while we really would love to serve Louisiana seafood all the time, it's not even available throughout the entire year.
Right.
And your guests are expecting you to have shrimp or crawfish or crab meat or anything along that side. And we don't have the abundance of fin fish that we have to offer that we had in the early 90s.
Right.
So it creates even more pressure on that as we compete with the recreational fishing interests that also want access to that resource. So it's a tough balancing act, but I can tell you that it's going to continue to be something that we have to fight over. We've got to have thick skin. The Restaurant Association, if you're interested, go to the archives for broadcast yesterday for the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, and you'll hear them make up things about our industry and about imported seafood that's just unproven.
Right.
So I'm not the defender of it, but I'm saying it's a market that's legal in the United States. There was even discussion of creating bills in future sessions that would prohibit the importation of seafood into Louisiana. So creating those types of closed markets doesn't help anyone and actually creates false pricing and false belief that that system can sustain itself. Moving away from the seafood and shrimping issues, we did renew for 5 more years the Louisiana Tax-Free Shopping Program. It's not anything a resident can use, but it's really popular with our international visitors. That basically means that they can file a form with their receipts for things that they purchase here, and they get their sales tax back. So that's always a good win. And we did work on 2 bills that are to help the hospitality and tourism and trade business when we're doing trade shows. One would exempt samples from having to pay sales tax, and another would provide very specific restrictions on a tobacco show that's been at the New Orleans Convention Center for many, many years. And we have the opportunity to pick up 2 or 3 more of those shows, and we needed to extend the sunset of their exemption that they had. So those are the kinds of things that we work on. And then lastly, medical marijuana is a real hot button at the Capitol because there are people that think recreational marijuana should happen. There was not one bill filed this year passing recreational marijuana, or seeking to pass that rather. And the medical marijuana, it operates in a gray zone. And while it's legal in Louisiana, it's still illegal federally.
Right.
And for a physician to recommend this, it's not a prescription. It's purely a recommendation. So there's issues in workers' comp. There's issues in dealing with traffic and intoxication and things of that sort. If we're going to move in the direction of recreational marijuana, Let's hope the federal government moves in and sets some preemption standards on what the strength of that is. What does intoxication from THC look like comparative to alcohol or something along that line? We've just got to get some consistency in there. And fortunately for us, we didn't have to burn up a lot of bandwidth on lobbying those types of issues, but we did do a great deal of education this year. And like every session, when we get down to the last week, we're going to be probably budget 24/7 starting today until the gavel drops at 6 o'clock next Thursday.
Well, we'll see in the coming weeks, and we wish you guys well in the last week of the session.
Yeah, the last week is going to be fun. As we look at this budget, there's $2.2 billion projected in a surplus. If you look at the difference between where the House is and the Senate is, the Senate passed a resolution last week that all the senators, 39 members, signed off on to increase the spending limit. It's not the same thing as what the debt ceiling that the House passed a bill on today, the Congress passed. It's a spending limit. There's a spending limit on how much money the state can spend each fiscal year. This year, if they didn't raise the limit, it was about $450 million more than last year. Next year, it's about $540 million. But that would leave $1.3 billion out there for everyone to fawn over. The Senate sent a message to the House very clearly. Yesterday, the Speaker of the House, Clay Shakespeare, called this out of order and got 57 votes to bring it forward. It takes 70 votes. But I'll look at the list of people who were absent yesterday, and 6 of those 7 were Democrats who would surely lean on that, which gets them to 63 votes. And it just really depends on how this Republican coalition of the conservative caucus, which is actually 39 people, but they pull 41 votes, where they stay on this. If they don't bend, they won't raise the cap. I do think because it's an election year, the governor is very slow to sign bills. He stretches this out as much as he can so he can leverage things that you need for your district, and then they can dangle outlay to you that's already in the Senate version of the bill, but not in the House version of the bill. So it's horse trading at its best, and we'll see where that goes. But I can assure you that my view today versus a week ago is that they'll probably have a budget by the time they adjourn. If they don't, they're going to come right back in for a 5-day session just to pass a budget. And we've had to do that a couple of times during Governor Edwards' term. But it's just part of the process, as they say. And we're
Making
going to be
sausage.
there. Yeah, we're going to be there looking out for the interest of our members. That's
Right
for sure.
until the very end. And then we'll be paying attention in the weeks following that.
As I explained to someone at the Capitol at times on issues, sometimes you're the windshield and sometimes you're the bug. So.
Oh, gosh. Another Stanism. Here's a message from our sponsor, Louisiana Seafood.
Louisiana restaurants are open and ready to serve you. This is Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser. Satisfy your cravings with world-famous Louisiana seafood. All the flavors you love, prepared by our world-famous chefs, and fresh from our bountiful waters to your plate. So head over to your local favorite restaurant and be sure to ask for authentic Louisiana seafood. Brought to you by the Louisiana Restaurant Association and Louisiana Seafood Board. A perfect pair.
Well, thanks for all of that information. We also have the National Restaurant Association Public Affairs Conference coming up June 19th through the 21st, and we have almost 30 members joining you and Will at the Capitol for those sessions. You want to tell us a little bit about what goes on at those at that event?
Certainly. There's a lot of activity going on this year related to a bill that was filed seeking to reduce credit card swipe fees. And I know we'll have a lot of discussion about that. We'll have a lot of discussion about immigration. And as it sits right now, one of the things we've been working with NRA on is messaging to our members of Congress about not pushing forth the nomination of Julie Suh to be the labor secretary. All of these crazy labor things that originated in California, she was the labor commissioner in California. She served as a deputy to Marty Walsh, who was labor secretary, and they wanted to move her right into that job. We've been able to get the Retail Federation, NFIB, our association, and others that relate to business groups to object to this. And so far it's been held up. We have not seen a cloture motion from Leader Schumer to move this forward, and hopefully it will just go away.
Thank you for all that information, Stan. I have every confidence that you guys are crossing every T and dotting every I on this array of issues that impact our industry here in Louisiana. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back with our next episode when Stan breaks it all down, how it all went during the 2023 legislative session. Thanks, everyone.